Hi there, I'm Darlene. Ever been shut out by the very people who called you family? My mother-in-law planned a dinner. Everyone was invited but me. The maitre d' told me there was no seat for me, in a restaurant I partially owned. And that wasn't even the worst part. What would you do if the people closest to you smiled to your face, while quietly erasing your name from everything? Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? Who did you trust that later betrayed you the most? And just out of curiosity, what time is it where you are and what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd really love to know. The wind cut sharp as I stepped out of the car. Chicago's Gold Coast in December wasn't kind to bare skin, and yet I hadn't thought to bring gloves. My fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from the way the moment sat heavy in my chest. Maison Bellamy towered in front of me, dressed in golden lights and soft jazz humming from inside. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a family dinner, a second chance. I smoothed my coat and walked up the steps. As the door opened, warmth washed over me, but it didn't settle. The maitre d' gave a polite smile, tight at the corners. "Reservation name, ma'am?" "Riker, party of 6. He scanned the screen, his brow creased. "I'm sorry. I don't see a Riker on the list tonight." My breath caught. "There must be a mistake. It's under Morgan Sinclair or Francis Duval, my husband's family." Another pause. "There is a Sinclair party, but only 5 guests listed. No additional names." I swallowed. "Can you double-check? They know I'm coming." Before he could respond, a voice curled into the space like cold perfume. "Oh, darling, did you really think you were included?" Frances, dressed in velvet, pearls glinting under the chandelier. Her lips were curved, but her eyes weren't smiling. Lana and Renee flanked her like hand-picked shadows. Clayton stood slightly behind them, silent, eyes flicking anywhere but mine. "This is a family dinner," Frances said lightly. "I assumed you understood what that meant." My voice was even. "I am family." A snicker from Lana. Renee looked away. Clayton opened his mouth, then closed it. Of course he did. Frances leaned in just slightly. "We didn't want to make a scene, but showing up uninvited is tacky." The maitre d' looked torn, eyes darting between me and the group, unsure who to believe, who to serve. I could have cried. I could have screamed. I did neither. Instead, I smiled. "Would you be so kind," I said to the maitre d', "as to let Mr. Victor Stiles know that Darlene Whitmore is here?" Frances let out a short laugh. "Victor, please," as if the owner of this place would interrupt his evening for... "I think he'll want to." Her smile faded, not gone, but cracking. The maitre d' looked confused, then nodded and disappeared into the back. The silence at the entrance stretched, uncomfortable. Clayton cleared his throat. Lana picked at her nail. Then Victor appeared, older now, but still sharp-suited and calm-eyed. His presence alone shifted the air. He walked straight to me, hands outstretched. "Darlene, it's been too long." "Too long," I echoed, hugging him briefly. Victor turned to the maitre d'. "Set a place, at the head table." Frances stepped forward. "Excuse me, but this is a private event." Victor looked at her. "Madam, this building is not just a restaurant. It's part of an investment group co-owned by Darlene Whitmore." He turned to the staff. "Treat her as you'd treat me." The maitre d' straightened like a soldier. "Yes, sir." Frances blinked, thrown. Clayton's jaw twitched. Lana's smirk died. "I believe there's an empty seat?" I asked, voice honeyed. A waiter scurried ahead to reset the table. I walked in, heels clicking across marble like punctuation. The chair at the head wasn't just open, it was waiting. As I sat, I glanced at Clayton. "You forgot to text me the address," I said. "Good thing I found my way." He didn't respond. Of course he didn't. Dinner resumed around me, but I didn't eat. I watched, I listened, I calculated. Clayton never defended me. Frances never accepted me. And yet, here I was, at their table, in their place, on my terms. I wasn't seeking approval anymore. I was reclaiming space. If they wanted a war, they picked the wrong woman. The alert came just after midnight, a subtle vibration on the nightstand beside my untouched glass of water. I reached for my phone with the kind of reflex born from years of bad news. One tap opened the photo. 1 second made everything quiet. It was a charity gala, one of those luxury benefit events the Riker family loved to parade through. Velvet drapes, champagne towers, and donors who smelled like politics. I wasn't there, but Clayton was, and so was Samantha Kay. He stood beside her, one hand casually resting on the small of her back, like it had muscle memory. She wore a navy silk gown, fitted, strategic. His smile didn't belong to me. I stared at that picture longer than I'd like to admit. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it too quickly. They didn't forget to tell me. They excluded me, deliberately. When Clayton walked in 2 hours later, he smelled like gin and entitlement. He tossed his keys into the bowl, loosened his collar, and gave me a soft, exhausted smile. "You're still up?" I didn't answer. He noticed the phone in my hand, the glow still highlighting the betrayal he hadn't expected me to see so soon. "It was a last-minute thing," he said, already on defense. "Francis thought it'd be better to present a unified legacy with someone familiar to the donors." "Familiar," I repeated, flat. It was strategy, not personal. I wondered if he hurt himself. Maybe he did. Maybe that was the worst part. How normal this was for him. A night out with his past. A lie dressed in casual tones. "I didn't think you'd want to go anyway," he added. I almost laughed. Almost. I didn't ask questions. Questions implied I needed answers. I didn't. What I needed was clarity, and I had it now. That night, I sat at my desk, opened my email, and uploaded the photo to a private thread with one of my former PR consultants. In the subject line, I wrote, "Timing is everything." Beneath it, I suggested a caption, "A man committed to his legacy, flanked by his future." It was petty, strategic, controlled. By noon, the photo was trending in 3 different local society pages. By 2, Francis was on the phone with Clayton, shouting loud enough that even our marble countertops flinched. He slammed the door of his office. I sipped coffee. When he emerged, red-faced and accusatory, I looked up from my screen. "Really? This is what we're doing now?" I tilted my head. "Did I publish the caption? Or did you write your own fate?" His jaw locked. No answer. Just guilt wrapped in rage. I didn't need to gloat. I logged off and closed my laptop. Later that evening, I wrote in my journal. That's always how I make sense of betrayal. Not with yelling, but with ink. I listed everything I'd done for Clayton. Every risk, every dollar, every time I stepped back so he could take the credit. The list wasn't short. I watched the coverage swirl online. Francis had gone silent, no quotes to offer the press. Samantha had vanished from the event's post-coverage. Clayton? Still pretending it was all just optics. But something inside me had shifted. Again. They wanted to replace me. Francis thought this was chess. She forgot I've always played for keeps. The portraits lined the corridor like silent judges, framed, polished, and selectively edited. I walked slowly through the hall at the Riker estate, pretending to admire the fresh flowers and antique mirrors, but my eyes found what they weren't supposed to. My wedding photo was gone. For years it had hung between Clayton's graduation portrait and Lana's wedding shot. Now, in its place, a new family photo. Frances at the center, her hands resting on Clayton's shoulder. Lana to one side, Renee to the other. No me, not even a cropped corner. Something tightened behind my ribs. Not rage, something colder. Older. A familiar kind of ache that didn't scream. It hummed beneath my skin like a warning. I moved to the kitchen for a glass of water I didn't want, and that's when I heard them. "It just didn't match the rest of the family," Lana said, casual, like she was commenting on upholstery. Francis replied, light as silk, "It's just a decor decision. No hard feelings." No hard feelings. I stepped back into the hallway before they saw me. My grip on the glass left a crescent imprint against the base. I forced a smile as I re-entered the room, nodded when Renee offered coffee, and ignored the look Clayton gave me like he'd felt something shift but couldn't name it. He didn't say a word about the missing photo. Neither did I. 6 years ago, I sat across from Angela, the first wife of Clayton's older brother. She had hands that fidgeted with napkin edges and eyes that didn't hold your gaze too long. Francis had invited her for one holiday, maybe two. Then nothing. Angela disappeared from the photos, from stories, from heirloom discussions. One day I asked about her, and Francis replied, "Oh, we don't bring up the practice marriages." Back then, I laughed. I thought she was just bitter. Now, I realized she was rehearsed. Angela didn't leave the family. She was removed. So was I. And they'd been doing it long before I entered the script. That night, I stood in my penthouse in front of a blank white wall. The city glittered through the windows behind me, indifferent and constant. I scrolled through my phone. Albums filled with pictures Francis never acknowledged. Anniversaries, family vacations, my parents' first visit. All memories they refused to frame. I zoomed in on one shot, our wedding day, Clayton holding my hand just tight enough to mean something. "They erased me," I said aloud. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I still existed. They couldn't unmake that. And if they thought they could wipe me from their narrative without consequence, they hadn't learned a damn thing about the woman they married into. But they were about to. It started with a voicemail I almost ignored. "Mrs. Whitmore, there's been a discrepancy in recent filings. A transfer to an LLC we can't trace. You may want to look into it." I replayed the message 3 times, each repetition scraping deeper than the last. I wasn't just being erased anymore. I was being robbed. That evening, I pulled out our joint statements. Clayton and I had shared accounts since Riker Capital was just an idea on a napkin. My name had always been there, typed in bold beside his, until recently. Now it was gone, stripped clean. Only his remained. I followed the trail, bank wires, corporate filings, shell names. The route twisted like a snake, but it led exactly where I knew it would. To Francis. The same woman who said I didn't belong was now signing my name out of my future. 6 months ago, Clayton brought me a stack of papers wrapped in legal jargon. He called it streamlining, said it was to simplify tax exposure. I had just returned from a work trip. I was exhausted, distracted. He smiled when he handed it over, said, "Just initial here, babe. You trust me, right?" I did. And that trust just cashed out. The signature was mine. The terms weren't. Buried in Clause 12, temporary financial power of attorney, scope, unlimited, expiry, discretionary. He hadn't just lied, he'd engineered a trap. By morning, I was in Marcia's office, pouring black coffee into a mug that said, "File like a girl," while she opened a folder labeled Asset Retention Strategy. "You have 2 angles," she said, scanning the contract. "Fraud by omission and improper fiduciary conduct. Francis's fingerprints are all over this LLC. We move fast. We get ahead." I nodded. No panic. Just clarity. "Do it." She slid a legal declaration across the desk. "This is the first nail." I signed. That night, Clayton was in the kitchen, humming to himself while chopping parsley like nothing had changed. He poured wine, plated pasta, set the table. "Figured you'd be hungry." I watched him for a beat too long, studied the way his back straightened when I didn't move. "It's funny," I said, walking over, "how easy it is to sign something you don't understand." He froze, hand halfway to the wine bottle. "Darlene, I can explain." "Don't." I pulled out the chair but didn't sit. "We'll talk," I said, voice calm, precise. "But not about pasta, not about your mother, about my name, and why it's no longer on our accounts." His lips parted. No words came. I leaned in, resting one hand lightly on the table. My voice dropped low. "Now let's talk about your mother's name on my money." The moment I stepped onto the rooftop, I knew the brunch wasn't about celebrating Francis. It was a performance. Everything from the champagne flutes balanced on trays to the harpist in the corner screamed curated perfection. The air was thick with social power plays, barely concealed beneath synthetic smiles and sequined cocktail dresses. I wore navy, understated, tailored, the kind of presence that didn't beg to be seen, but couldn't be ignored. Frances stood at the head of a long table draped in blush silk, her arms outstretched like she was greeting royalty. "Everyone, thank you for joining me. Another year older, another year wiser." Her laugh didn't reach her eyes. Then came the moment. "I have something special for one of my favorite additions to the family," she said, her gaze landing squarely on me. A little something to help her find her way. A waiter brought over a box tied with gold ribbon. I didn't reach for it right away. "Go on," she coaxed. "It's just a bit of fun." I untied the bow slowly, cautious of the trap I already knew was waiting. Inside was a hardback book, rich leather binding, old-fashioned lettering. "How to be a proper hostess, a guide for women without heritage." Laughter sparkled around the table like broken glass. Lana sipped her mimosa, eyes shining. Renee tried and failed to suppress a smile. Clayton, he looked down at his plate, tracing the rim of his glass with one finger. My mouth curved into a practiced smile. I nodded once and held the book like it was nothing. My fingers, beneath the tablecloth, gripped the spine until it hurt. "How thoughtful," I said quietly. Frances beamed. "I thought it might fill in some gaps. You know, for those of us who didn't grow up, steeped in tradition." I said nothing more. I didn't need to. That night, I sat at the kitchen island, the book open under a single pendant light. I flipped through it page by page. The tips were absurd. How to fold napkins like nobility, how to manage difficult family dynamics with humility. Then I saw it. In the back, printed in small serif font. Custom edition printed exclusively for Frances Duval. And just beneath it, an acknowledgement. Inspired by true stories shared in confidence. They weren't just general tips. They were twisted retellings of my own past. My mother's waitressing job. The apartment I once shared with 4 roommates. The time I showed up to a gala in off-the-rack satin and was told I looked courageous. Frances hadn't bought the book. She had commissioned it. Not a joke, not a passive jab. This was premeditated character assassination, bound, printed, and delivered with a smile. The next morning, I walked into a bookstore in Lincoln Park and asked for a first edition of The Art of War. The clerk looked impressed. "Gift?" she asked. "Yes," I said, smiling. "A very overdue one." I wrapped it in soft gray silk and sent it to Frances's estate with no card. At the next family dinner, she avoided my eyes for the first time in months. Clayton sat stiffly beside her, chewing with robotic detachment. I placed my napkin across my lap and turned to her. "Thank you again for the book. I found your fiction surprisingly revealing." Frances stiffened. Lana blinked. Silence clung to the table like fog. Then I leaned toward Clayton and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "I think it's time your mother starts reading contracts more closely." It came through while I was folding laundry, just a buzz on my phone from Lana. I assumed it was another passive-aggressive meme or some staged holiday photo. Instead, it was a message not meant for me. "Let's make sure she's not invited to the Christmas thing this year. Keep it clean. Family only." There was no emoji, no fluff. Just intent. Deliberate and clear. I read it twice. Then a third time, scanning for a typo or accidental tone. But no, this wasn't a mistake in wording. It was a mistake in destination. She meant to send it to the group chat. Riker only. She sent it to me instead. I didn't respond. There was no need. Silence can be sharp enough. I stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by the hum of the dryer, listening to my heartbeat thud through my chest like slow knocks on a door I didn't want to open. Later that night, Renee posted a picture. Holiday lights strung across the ceiling, candles flickering along a table covered in gold and red. Everyone smiling. The caption read, "Family, always." But in the lower right corner of the photo, something caught my eye. A chair, set and waiting, napkin folded perfectly. My name card sitting neatly atop the charger plate, then scratched through with black ink. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. My name was still legible beneath the line. Not enough to erase it, just enough to humiliate. They didn't just forget me, they performed my absence. I printed the photo and pinned it above my desk, next to the framed share certificate from Riker Capital. The contrast felt poetic. My erasure at their table, set beside my ownership of the company they used to mock me for helping build. Then I forwarded the message and photo to Marcia with one line. Pattern of exclusion, emotional targeting. Her reply came quickly. Excellent. This proves hostile environment. We'll thread it through the response strategy. I looked back at the chair. The napkin still folded, the plate untouched. There's power in being excluded. Once you're not wanted, you owe no one your silence. The next evening, I lit a candle in my own dining room, just one. No centerpieces, no orchestras of champagne glasses, just a single bottle of Merlot, a bowl of carbonara, and my laptop open to Riker's December expense reports. I scheduled an internal audit with our compliance officer. I marked travel budgets, executive bonuses, year-end charitable donations, everything that had a signature but didn't cross my desk. They made their statement with a chair. I'd answer with the boardroom. I raised my glass to the photo taped above my screen and whispered, "You can have your table. I'm building the damn building." The drawer didn't creak, but it may as well have screamed. I found the key hidden behind a framed photo in Clayton's home office, one we'd taken years ago in Santa Barbara. He looked proud. I looked naive. The file was labeled Initial Investment Agreement. My name was written in sharp black ink across the front. My heart didn't race, it just sank, heavier than guilt, colder than rage. I sat down and unfolded the pages. It was all there. My original investment into Riker Capital, my signature, my terms, and the clause, buried but intact. Retaining control rights unless expressly relinquished in court. I never signed a relinquishment. Not then, not ever. So why did every official record show otherwise? I took pictures of each page and sent them to Marcia before I even stood up. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. "We have a bigger problem," she texted. "Bigger than your husband secretly stripping you of your legal rights?" Marcia called. Her voice was brisk, no greeting. "Francis filed a voluntary ownership transfer request 6 weeks ago." I blinked. "I never signed anything." "She used a scanned version of your signature from the 2017 licensing renewal forms. The document is doctored." My throat went dry. "This isn't just messy," Marcia continued. "It's criminal." I didn't reply. I stared at the wall across from me, lined with Clayton's awards, all built on my money, my trust, my silence. Frances forged my name, and Clayton let her. The next morning, I sat in Marcia's office while she laid out the plan. "We move to revoke Frances's access. We freeze all joint assets, including Riker Capital distributions. We file a formal fraud complaint." I nodded. "We'll call a shareholders meeting. Quiet, clean, legal. Just the three of us. You, me, and the two silent partners whose votes swing everything." "Do it." Marcia slid over a motion for declaratory relief. I signed without blinking. Let them feel what it's like to be on the outside of something they thought they owned. That afternoon, Frances received the envelope, certified, sealed, and soul-shaking. Inside, an official summons. She had 10 days to respond to allegations of financial misconduct and forgery. She called Clayton. Loud, panicked. "I told you to keep her busy. How the hell did she find that contract?" I stood in the hallway, arms folded, listening to his stuttering non-answers. Then I stepped into the room. She went quiet. Clayton turned toward me like he'd seen a ghost. I leaned against the doorframe. Calm, cold. "I hope you both remember the part where I built everything you're about to lose." They called it a reconciliation dinner. The invitation came in a cream envelope with gold foil edges, handwritten in Frances's careful cursive like she was offering peace, not poison. I knew better, but I accepted. Some wars are best won in the enemy's dining room. The house looked the same, timeless on the outside, rotting at the seams inside. When I walked in, every smile felt rehearsed. Frances greeted me with a light air kiss. Darlene, you look rested. Clayton stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, eyes already distant. No greeting, no acknowledgement. We sat. The food came. Conversation skipped across safe surfaces, charity updates, holiday weather, some senator's misstep. I played along, waiting. Then Frances raised her glass. We've all had difficult months, she began. But in the spirit of healing, I'd like to remind us what family means. Strength, history, resilience. Her eyes landed on me and I saw it. That flicker of cruelty beneath the polish. And some of us, she continued, voice syrup smooth, have come from places where those values weren't taught. But they can be learned, can't they? Lana coughed to stifle a laugh. Clayton shifted in his seat, said nothing. Frances kept going. I remember Darlene telling us once about her mother's 3 jobs, the eviction. That night she slept in a car during college finals. Remarkable, really, how far you've come. My fork froze midair. Those stories were private. I had told them to Clayton, in whispered moments, in bed, in trust. And now they were being served like hors d'oeuvres. Frances leaned in slightly. Pain makes us strong, or bitter. The table was silent. Every eye now on me. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I stood, lifted my wineglass, and smiled. Here's to silence, I said, voice steady, because silence tells me exactly where you stand. I looked directly at Clayton. He blinked, but didn't speak. No apology, no defense, just more silence. I turned to Frances. I shared with him what I thought was safe. You made it a weapon. I hope it serves you better than it served me. No one moved. I reached down, slid my wedding ring from my finger, and set it gently on the edge of my plate. Frances stared at it like it might burn her. I didn't wait for dessert. As I walked out, the quiet behind me stretched like smoke, heavy and unspoken. Let them sit with it. The envelope arrived without ceremony. No warning. Just a crisp manila package left at my attorney's office, sealed with the state's seal and finality. Inside was everything. Frances's forged documents had been reviewed, dissected, and dismissed. Clayton's silent complicity was documented in every ignored email, every quietly moved asset. And me? I wasn't just restored, I was vindicated. Full reinstatement. Control of Riker Capital. Board seats reassigned. Frances removed permanently. Clayton's accounts frozen, pending court-ordered asset division. Marcia looked at me across her desk and said, "It's done." But I didn't feel victorious. I felt leveled, like someone had reset the chessboard and handed me the crown, but I was too tired to wear it. Later that week, I walked into the Riker Capital headquarters, not through the side entrance like I used to, but through the front, past the receptionist who once thought I was the assistant. I bypassed the main floor, took the elevator to the top, and stepped into Clayton's old office. It still smelled like his cologne. I didn't sit. Instead, I walked to the walnut desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out the framed plaque that read, Chief Executive Officer, Clayton Riker. I set it gently on the windowsill. Not in anger, not as a trophy. Just so I'd never forget the space I once helped build, and the man who thought I didn't belong in it. Frances didn't call. She didn't need to. The paper did all the talking. One day later, she sat alone at her sprawling dining table, porcelain china untouched, a newspaper folded in her lap. The headline read, Investor Widow Removed After Family Power Struggle. She reached for her phone. A missed call. Blocked number. She deleted it without checking the voicemail. Meanwhile, I sat across from Victor, sunlight warming the patio of the new restaurant I was opening under my own name. No more initials. No more shared credits. Just mine. You finally feel free? He asked, sipping his espresso. Legally? Yes, I said. Personally? Maybe not ever. He didn't push. I looked out over the city, steel, glass, and second chances. They thought they could erase me, that if they denied me enough seats at the table, I'd eventually stop showing up. But they forgot one thing. I owned the damn table now. They tried to take everything from me. What they never realized was that I'd already started over. I used to think that staying silent was a form of grace, that if I endured enough, gave enough, proved enough, I'd finally belong. But the truth is, some people will only see what they want to erase. You can't convince someone of your worth if they've already decided you have none. So I stopped waiting for permission. I stopped asking for space. I took it. And if you're watching this right now, feeling like you've been pushed to the edge, let me tell you, there's power in being counted out. There's freedom in realizing you owe them nothing. Stand up, reclaim your name, and build the damn table they wouldn't let you sit at. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been excluded by the people who were supposed to support you? How did you reclaim your power? Drop a comment and let's talk. And hey, if this story hit you in the heart, comment 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, tell me why. I'd love to hear your take. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story. We've got more truth, healing, and fire coming your way.